Wait a minute, Adam. You haven't seen Flash Gordon.
You really haven't seen Cool World.
What about Dune? Let's remedy that. Welcome to Raised by Spoilers, everyone, where we watch and unpack cult movies, some of them good,
And all of them bad.
Tonight we're unpacking Dune 1984. But first, I'm joined with plebeian Adam. Nathan is joining us.
Hello.
And I'm Geek Movie House, Rich.
Are you sure you're not like Geek Worm Movie House?
I am the Quizart Satarak, and this is my final form!
May his passing be swift.
Based on Frank Herbert's first novel in the classic book series and directed by David Lynch, Dune is the epic story of Paul Atreides' journey from the simple boy to a leader of a desperate resistance. Dune takes place on the desert planet of Arrakis, the only known source of the most important substance in the galaxy, melange, or spice. Paul battles the corrupt Emperor Shaddam and the evil forces of House Harkonnen over control of the spice. Along the way, Paul discovers that he may have a much grander destiny. Yeah, that's a really, really compacted synopsis.
There's a lot here. There's a lot.
You're missing a lot of knives and a lot of worms.
And a lot of rotoscoped eyes.
A lot of rotoscoped eyes. Show of hands, who read the book? That is a great visual bit we just did. Thank you very much. So Nathan and I have read Dune. Adam, is this your first viewing?
No, not really.
Okay.
I have attempted to view. Was this the director's cut by any chance?
There is no director's cut.
You're right. But I heard that there's like a longer cut and a shorter cut.
Okay, so there are 3 versions of Dune.
Okay.
There is a TV version.
Okay.
And then there is the, I think, theatrical. And then there's the super duper special edition, which is like a $90 box set kind of thing, $100 box set. And it's pretty much the same movie.
Okay, I heard there was a super long version, or was an even longer version or something like that. So I've tried to watch it. I have the movie, and I have tried to watch it probably 3 times in my life.
Okay.
I don't think I ever made it past the half an hour. Now that I realize how long the movie feels, I don't think I ever made it past the half an hour mark.
And
so,
as a Dune fan, I get it.
I will say, I fell asleep the first 3 times I tried to watch this movie.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with substances or anything like that. It's just a very slow, different kind of sci-fi movie.
Now, if you talk about a director's cut, I'm sure if you scour, say, YouTube or just the internet in general, you'll find little clips that were exempt from the film. Because I remember seeing a lot of clips or just segments of the film that weren't in the movie that we just saw.
Well, I think that frames this pretty well because I did watch some, I had seen stuff about Dune. This is Raised by Spoilers.
Okay, so
I know what's going on.
There's sand.
It
There's
gets
worms.
everywhere, and we hate it.
And,
of course.
Right.
Yeah. But I
Not just the
understand
men,
that
but the women
David
and children
Lynch
too.
wanted this to be 2 movies.
He wanted to make... The people working on it thought it was 3.
Always 3 movies.
They thought they were going to get 3. Lynch wanted to do 2.
Okay, so that's what it was. And I understand that
And they got 1.
Yeah, halfway through filming or something. They promised him 2 or something like that. And about some way through filming, they just went, you remember that promise we made to you? Yeah, no.
You're completely over budget.
And that makes sense because there's, I think it was about the 45-minute mark of the film. We got to a point and they're just like, and fast forward. We're just going to skip everything.
You have to cut everything out, unfortunately.
Yo,
there's a big story here. Now, granted, I
know all that minutia and that fun stuff? Yeah, that's gone.
So before we really start unpacking it and deep diving, what did you think? Like, just right off the top.
It's hard. It's weird that it's one of those things where it came after Star Wars. The movie came out after Star Wars. It came out after Flash Gordon. It came out after all of these sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
But I can't tell if I feel feels like an Ouroboros where I can tell that this series, the book, inspired all of those other things.
Right.
And yet the art style and the filming style from those influenced this one.
Right.
So it's like this Ouroboros of feeding each other all the way through.
It's a worm eating its own tail.
The book inspired the movie,
mind
inspired
on
the
spice.
movie.
It's just fucking stoned out of its mind on spice.
So I liked it.
Mhm.
It definitely felt like that 80s A New Hope. I can see why A New Hope was so different than all the rest. It felt more like Flash Gordon than it did like New Hope, but it's somewhere in between.
So David Lynch had just done The Elephant Man.
Yeah.
Okay. And Eraserhead was another film that he worked on. Lynch is a cult director. He's done tons of stuff like
All
Twin
black
Peaks,
and white.
Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet. There's the new version of Twin Peaks. There's tons of stuff. His whole catalog is just wild. He was being eyed because of how great Eraserhead and Elephant Man were to do Return of the Jedi.
No.
He was going to do Return of the Jedi, but
Oh, my
he fucking hated Star Wars. And that's why a lot of the shots in this movie, you mentioned when we were watching it, you're like, "Ooh, that looks a little rough. That looks a little bit more like Space Odyssey." Why the fuck does that look like Space Odyssey? We're so far into ILM and LucasArts and all of this other stuff. It's because he wanted it to not be. It's the thinking man's Star Wars.
Yeah.
This is you. Oh, you have to read the book to get it.
And I understand that he didn't want all these like space flying sequences and showing things in space. He really didn't want to add to the movie, but he was basically told to because those were the in thing at the time. And like you said, everyone wanted their Star Wars. So I understand like the producers forced him to put similar scenes in there.
Right. Because he honestly felt in interviews and stuff afterwards, he felt like he sold out.
Yes.
He felt personally like he sold out. And he kind of hates this movie because it was such a nightmare to make.
Which, honestly, there's so many good things about this movie. It is truly impressive.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's very influential. It's a little weird. It's dry. It's sandy.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. So you enjoyed it.
I would say I did, but here's one caveat I'll put. So we talked about all the keywords, and you have to know all these. They say these keywords, but they don't ever explain them.
There's a whole lexicon that you need to know going into this, and you just kind of go with it.
So I'm incredibly happy you brought that up.
Okay.
Because when they were first filming it and test filming it, they had to hand out pamphlets to people in the audience.
Did hear about that.
And they had to read these pamphlets, and it was pretty much a very small encyclopedia of every single term that would be said because no one knew what the fuck they were talking about.
Yeah.
And no one could understand. It's a really kind of pedal to the metal, balls to the wall approach to science fiction where it's like, hey, you haven't read the literature? You haven't read the source material? Well, you better catch up.
Yeah, I feel like we're in this world where every movie you make that's based on a book, a video game, or whatnot is designed to fit to everyone.
Yeah.
If you don't know who Thor is, here's a movie. You don't need to know who Thor is in the comics to figure this out. You want to watch a World of Warcraft movie?
That is the perfect analogy.
The Warcraft. Yeah,
Warcraft
absolutely.
movie isn't a great Warcraft movie for Warcraft fans. It's trying to get people in to become Warcraft fans.
Whereas this one went the other direction and said, oh, you're new to Dune? Go fuck yourself.
Wheel of Time's like that too.
The new show?
I found.
Yeah. I think if you're going in and you don't know anything about Wheel of Time, you're going to have, I don't want to say a hard time catching up, but there's a lexicon you need to learn.
So there's a whole bit, because I've never read Wheel of Time, and we watched all of it, and we got all the way to the end of this first season and went, I still don't know what the fuck is going on. And I don't know what they're talking about and everything like that. And I had to ask you a ton of questions.
Yeah, we could do a whole Q&A about this. Like, we can go on for hours. But we're talking about Dune.
That's the feeling I got when I watched this was because I had watched the new movie. I'd watched the newer movie. And because I have friends like you guys who tell me about Dune all the time, I kind of understand what's going on. I get it. And you kind of gave me that lexicon before we started, Nathan. And so because of that, it didn't bother me. There were times where I was like, wait, what did they say? Oh, it's the thing that Nathan mentioned earlier.
Bene Gesserit is a space witch, and the Chome Company is just the big company everybody works for, apparently.
Yeah.
The Spacing Guild is their truckers.
Yeah, and I could totally see a world where if you didn't have that, you would be fucking lost this whole movie.
Well, there was halfway through the film, for instance, you were saying, wait a minute, does he have the voice? Who has the voice? Because the way the inner monologuing is happening.
Oh, God.
Right? Inner monologue.
They have a lot of weird asides in this film.
Right.
I'm guessing that came from the books, because I'm
Yes.
guessing in the books they had a lot of those.
They do.
There was that weird scene where he puts his hand in a box, and like that is just chocked full of nuance and dialogue.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the tree scorpions?
Oh, God. Callback joke.
Everything is looped to tree scorpions. You got to get that sweet, sweet venom in your vein. Put your hand in the box, grab a tree scorpion, give it a stroke.
What did they call that? Well,
It was
Gon Jabbar?
The Gom Jabbar.
Gon Jabbar.
The high-handed enemy.
Yeah, the only reason I know that one is because I really much enjoyed the newer version of that.
It's a needle with a drop of poison on its tip.
Did they say that in this?
No, they skipped a lot of that.
Okay.
They're just like, here's a needle, it's got poison, and go fuck yourself.
No, they say Ganjabar.
They say
They
Gom
mention
Jabbar,
it by name. They say the poison of it
they
will
give
kill
you
him.
the bare bones.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have that banter back and forth where I know in the book and in different versions of the film, Paul is supposed to be this arrogant guy. It's like, if you hurt me, I will call my guard, and how dare you? And she's like, your mom's at the door, and she's gonna stop them, and you're mine for like the next 10
Interesting,
minutes.
because they showed that off in the newer version way better. They showed off his douchiness
Yeah.
Yes.
in the new movie way better than in this
like,
older movie.
I'm a
Right.
prince. How dare you?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say I mean douchiness hits it. Paul isn't really necessarily a Chad as much as Paul is very well off and has never hurt for anything.
Entitled.
He's never
very,
suffered.
very entitled and like my father. And you get a lot of those kind of arguments
Yeah.
and vibes.
He's a guy who's never suffered, but he's really good at karate.
Well, I mean, he's getting trained and
Yeah.
well read, and you're seeing he has access to information and stuff like that. But anyway, so you enjoyed June.
June?
June.
Yeah, your text to me.
June.
Yes, I did enjoy it. I did. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's great. It is a slow ride. I will say Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is technically a longer movie. And
Yeah.
there is so much that happens in this one film that we stopped for a brief break to stretch our legs and all take a piss. And it was like, holy fuck, we're only halfway through.
Well, I
and
think-
so much has happened.
We had to like mop up all of our
So-
thoughts real quick.
So much has happened. Yeah, you got to just literally, before you fold space and time and do another line of melange, uncut, unfiltered, pure melange spice, you have to kind of just pull everything back in and go, okay, breath. Because this is a very Game of Thrones,
Yes.
the movie, but it's only a movie. It's not like we're going to give you a ton of build up. You're going to walk away, come back, unpack
Yeah.
everything, see what happens next week, because it just is so boom, boom,
It's
boom,
so
boom, boom.
dense.
It's dense and the events happen so
I
quickly.
feel like it's both slow and dense at the same time. So the first half I feel is it almost like feels like nothing much is happening, but they're setting the stage. So the nothing is happening, but they're filling your head with data.
Yeah.
Oh, I found the opposite. I found the first half was just very dense with all the stuff happening, and then the second half was, and then 4 years later, and then 2 years after that, and then 3 years after that.
Oh, see, and I felt like the first half was exposition. Aside from the whole 5 years opening, I totally get it. I want to make
Space.
fun of it,
And
but
they do have a lot of exposition. There's like, and here are the planets.
I think my
Space.
favorite part is first of all they have the exposition from the princess.
Mhm.
And that's slow. I think she was a bad choice to read that because she was just bland.
Yep.
And then she kept fading in and out.
Yep.
I suspect that was for editing because they were cutting up her voice clips.
Yep.
So they would fade her out when she had to start a new sentence. And then the best part was exposition, fade to black, Dune screen, and then exposition by a robot.
It's weird because like
I'm not a robot
I'm
because AI is real illegal.
I'm trying to think of another way to do it, and I only like it's her reading it on a like not a green screen soundstage, but it's her reading it. Or would you have rather read all of that exposition in yellow font?
Slowly scrolling up
Scrolling.
the screen.
Yeah,
away
up,
from me.
right?
No,
Because like when
there's-
Dune came out and like you got that blast of sand and then those letters almost crashed through the screen.
Yeah.
The first time I seen it, I'm like, fuck, was this in like 3D? Like what were they trying to do here? Because it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And you're like, it really just, there's a momentum
Yeah.
of like, here we no exposition.
Well,
Exposition.
there's a reason
it's
for
not
that.
It's an ooh. And then on the 8th day, they drank tea, and it's like, whoa, this slowed right the fuck down.
Yeah.
No, there's a reason why they had the Princess Erlon narrate at the beginning. It's because in the book, coin in the jar, they have every chapter prefixed with a quote from like it's the story is told from the retelling of Princess Irulan. She wrote a book, and this is her telling her story
Oh.
through of what happened, and she's just, you know, in a loveless marriage and blah,
that-
blah, blah, blah.
Makes sense in the book, but it doesn't fucking
It
make sense here.
Doesn't come
Right.
across.
And
It
she
doesn't work
doesn't
right.
make sense because she plays no role in this movie. You see her in 2 scenes. That's it.
In the book, her role is to be tragic, and in the movie, she's just present.
So the interesting thing is I want to get to ask Nathan next what his thoughts on the film are, because whether he liked it or not, because I know this isn't your first viewing.
I enjoyed it.
Lynch did the screenplay, but also boasts that he has never read Dune, which doesn't make sense because he wrote the screenplay. So you would have to have read the book in order to do the screenplay, right?
Not exactly.
He may have had like stagehands or assistants read the book and give him cliff notes, and he'll just go from there.
Right.
Also, this movie was passed round hand by hand to a bunch of different directors, and it already had all of the artists, the team that worked on this movie,
Yep.
already started working on it
Right.
when it was some older director with like H.R. Geiger involved. And all that fun
Jovanovski's.
jazz. Sorry?
Andrew or Alexander Janoski.
Yes.
Jovanovski's. Yeah. Dude,
That's his
the
name.
Never Made. Yeah.
The Never Made,
The
yeah.
Never Made one. Go watch that documentary. It's fucking
I
wonderful.
have
It's
heard-
wonderful.
Now
You-
that I've seen
the
this
art
movie, I
looks
think I
amazing.
you
get it.
have to go see it now. It's bananas and it's beautiful. It is just, you watch it on the biggest TV you can. It's a ride. It is a trip, and it is hemorrhaging money, and you immediately understand why it didn't get made. Keep going.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that I think they had all the screenplay, they had all of it written. I think he just slightly edited it. I say slightly, but I'm sure it was heavily. But he just took a screenplay that was pre-existing and rewrote it and said, "This is mine," which happens a lot in movies.
Well,
So I think that's more what happened.
So
sorry, who was the director for Starship Troopers?
I don't know off the top of my
I
head.
don't remember his name, but he did something very similar where he directed Starship Troopers, but he didn't actually read the book. He read maybe the first half of a chapter, got real bored with it, and had somebody else read it for him, and then give him the cliff notes. And I feel that may have been the case here as well.
It's very possible.
So let me just interject quick before I ask Nathan the very simple question of what he thought of the movie. Arthur Jacobs, the gentleman who produced all of the Planet of the Apes films,
The new ones.
the old ones,
Oh, the old ones.
the old ones, the old Planet of the Apes back in '72, he acquired the rights to Dune, and then he died
Right.
before he could make it. Jovanovski was 74, and he wanted to make a 10 to 12 hour movie, and none of the studios would have had him.
A single movie.
10 to 12 hour film. He later went on to do The In-Call, which is a comic book that he did with all of his artwork and Dune storyboards and stuff like that.
Huh.
Taika Waititi is going to make the movie for In-Call.
No.
Yep. Ridley Scott was going to make Dune in '78, right after he did the first Alien film.
Yes, that's
And
what
he-
I'm aware of.
He he took and reused a lot of Giger's artwork from Dune, from Jovanovski, which then turned into Alien.
Yes.
And then Jovanovski's ideas and H.R. Giger's designs for the Harkonnen, Harkonnen show up in the new Denis Villeneuve's film. All of those are still originally Giger designs,
Well, yeah.
which is really kind of a cool to see it.
I understand that the new Delanove, his version was strongly artistically inspired by this one.
Yeah.
He openly admitted he's like that. He saw that movie, loved it, wanted to do it in his own style.
It's too short.
Yeah,
It's too short.
and we all know it. Even David Lynch knew it.
Yeah. So, Nathan, thoughts on Dune? What'd you think?
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I wish they went into more detail. I think it could have been at least another 2 hours long, especially in the second half of the movie. But I understand when you're trying to cram what the audiobook is 45 hours long. So when you're trying to cram that into a 2 hour movie, you got to cut some stuff. I
Yeah.
get it. I hate it, but I get it.
Yeah.
Like they got to cut an entire relationship.
Yeah. There's also, there's so much they cut. Like
I
Paul-
love you now because we saw each other.
Yeah. Paul and
I've been dreaming of
Paul
you.
and Chani are supposed to actually have a kid who is murdered by Beast Raban. Like they're out on a raid, they come back, and there's just like pieces of a child left.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Dune is really cutthroat. It's
There
awesome.
is some meat that they missed in that second
No,
half.
I want to. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but goddamn,
It's your turn. You got the mic.
Beast Raban, the big red-headed gentleman, he's called Beast Raban in one of the books because
Is he the one that
he's
Dave Bautista plays in
Yes,
the
he
new
is
one?
the one
Yes.
that
Okay.
Dave Bautista is betraying.
The big cousin.
I want to talk about actually Baron Harkonnen's what's it called? Who's that philosopher that he's very cutthroat? Dark deeds must be done at night.
Oh, the prince.
Fuck.
Not Merovingian.
The
I
Frenchman?
have his book.
The Frenchman?
Not Malthusian. My God.
He wrote the book called The Prince.
Machiavelli.
Machiavelli. Yep.
Yeah, how Machiavellian Baron Harkonnen is, because he wants to take over Dune from the Atreides, or take back Dune from the Atreides. He wants to establish his one nephew, Beast Raban, and he's got the name Beast because he killed his parents, and his parents, while they were being murdered, said something like, "I know you're not going to murder me because only a beast would murder his parents." And he's like, "Well, call me a beast and go fuck yourself."
Wow.
So he puts Beast Raban in charge of Dune and says, "Take it back, squeeze it as hard as you fucking can." And then he goes over to his other nephew, Fade, and is like, "Yeah, when he fucks up, I'm going to replace him with you."
Oh, that's what that was all about.
That's what that was
He
about.
intended to play the role of, you're going to play the dick,
Yep.
and then I'm going to send my other good nephew
Mhm.
to become the hero.
Who is also a sociopath.
Faye,
yeah.
portrayed by singer-songwriter, frontman of the Police, Sting.
Sting, yeah.
None other.
That guy's got a cocaine body.
He does
Speaking
have a cocaine
of
body.
music, I would also like to talk about how music by Toto.
Yeah, okay, I noticed that.
Another sci-fi movie scored by a rock band.
Did anyone actually notice? I didn't feel Toto in any of that soundtrack.
So I'd bless the rains down in Africa.
You gotta think too. It's the same thing with Flash Gordon. It's not necessarily someone singing and stuff like that as much as it's Toto the band writing synth and like this
okay.
huge, of course, like almost church choir orchestral.
So they didn't pull the-
large thing.
When there's no main singer, it's really hard to pinpoint where the artist comes
It's the
from.
same thing with the Flash Gordon one, right? We have the dun 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 Flash, like all of that.
Yeah.
But then
He'll
when
save
you
every one of us.
watch it, you're hearing just this soft, somber guitar work, and that's the band of Queen writing the rest of it because there is a soundtrack
Right.
for it all, and it's just very psychedelic, almost airy. It's sci-fi. It's sci-fi space
Yeah.
music, and that's what was fun. Even with the scene where Harkonnen is floating around, like giggling and rubbing his nipples, and the guy's just playing with like this metal toy, and you're like, "Is that music?" And
as
it's like
far as I can tell,
someone just cranking on that keyboard, just making noise.
it sounded like space bagpipes,
Right,
but worse.
Right.
Like it's what you get if you mix space bagpipes and like nails on a chalkboard.
right, yeah. Just industrial and loud clashing, and not necessarily heavy metal in any way, but it's just
loud.
a cacophony of sound and chaos, and which really kind of reflects the Harkonnen like lifestyle and virtues and stuff like that.
So I got a feeling. Now here's an interesting thing that I got to ask you about. You mentioned kind of, I think it was after the movie or before, I forget exactly when, that it was in our intermission break, that Harkonnen, the Baron, isn't as gross as they portray him in this.
Harkonnen has a weird backstory. Do you want me to get into that?
Go for it.
Yeah, okay. So I've read the books, the prequels and the sequels, and the backstory of Baron Harkonnen is he's portrayed in Dune as just this morbidly obese gentleman he uses gravity floaters to get around because his body can't handle his legs can't handle the weight of his body. But he wasn't always like that. He was back in his heyday, he was very much a Chad. He was very ripped, very built, and he was a guy that would just go out like spear hunting things for fun. He would go out on raids. He'd join in the gladiatorial combats just because he could. And we know from the Bene Gesserit, a thing about the Bene Gesserit in the Dune world is that they preserve bloodlines. Like they will mate with and produce offspring from specific families with desirable traits.
Is that because they're aiming to build this prophesized
They want to
child?
build the Kwisatz Haderach, if you want to talk about hard to pronounce made up words.
Yeah.
Which is basically a male Bene Gesserit, somebody who can use the voice, use the spice, and just be
Paul Atreides. They want to make Paul
they want to make
Atreides,
Paul Atreides.
except they want to make it female so they can control it.
They want to make it male, but they want it under their control.
Got it.
And because Paul went rogue on a desert planet. Nobody could find him, blah, 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 blah.
Got
So they approached Baron Harkonnen, who is a dick. And they sent him one of the Bene Gesserit sisters who was supposed to accept his seed. And because he's a dick, instead of just doing what he was supposed to do, he decided to force himself upon her. And in retribution, because Bene Gesserits are just wild women, they store so many diseases in their bodies that they can just release at will. She released a bunch of diseases on him, one of which was it's a disease that destroys muscle and turns it to fat. So instead of having this Adonis body, he is just this rotund gentleman now.
I find that they worked, I don't know if this is how it was, but they worked very hard to make the Harkonnens evil.
Evil.
They there are things that make someone evil. Scar is a clear example of this.
Yeah.
They always have a scar of it's always a physical deformation.
A body
horror,
yeah.
a body
Something that says, this is the bad guy.
Which is a really I don't want to say bad clutch. It's a crutch. It's a crutch, and it's a cliche now. And
let's say cartoonish.
It is cartoonish.
Yeah.
But body.
But they did that. They immediately introduced him as being gross.
Yeah.
And then they introduced him as being kind of strange, which is also another evil thing. And then they immediately showed him off as murdery.
Right.
They gave you the trifecta.
Yeah.
The book, Coins in the Jar, he's also very into children.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
They do all of this, and I think they do a good job because it's very clear from the moment you meet this character, you're like, oh, he's the bad guy.
Well, you want to feel gross watching him.
Oh,
and I feel
they
like the
succeed.
performance, and the actor chews it up.
Oh,
he
yeah.
chews
great.
up the role of Baron Harkonnen. It's again,
what's the name of the actor? Can we bring that up?
It's okay. We're okay.
we're okay.
Just a little bit of beer. Baron's doctor.
A lot of there you go.
Kenneth McMillan.
Yeah, Kenneth McMillan.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Yeah. Kenneth McMillan chews it up.
You can tell he's
It
loving
is-
the role too.
It is. It's very theater. It is like
He's
playing
having so much fun with it.
incredibly over the top. It almost reminds me of Max von Sydow, who shows up in this film as well. We've seen him in Flash Gordon as Ming the Merciless.
Yes.
And he plays not Duncan, Idaho.
Kynes. The Imperial Ecologist Kynes.
This is why we have Nathan on the podcast tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He is the encyclopedia
On a
of
personal,
Dune.
who, on a personal note, inspired me to go into the university course that I did. So
Really?
Well, that's fantastic.
I
Good.
did a lot of ecology stuff, and I thought it was. I read the book, thought it was cool. I'm like, I'm gonna do ecology. That's neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
For
really good.
Not as culty of a movie. That actor also plays, I think, I forget his title, but the head judge in Judge Dredd in the old one.
Oh, it is culty, and it is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the Stallone Judge Dredd?
Yeah, the
yes, he
Stallone
plays
one.
the head judge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did a great. Honestly, the cast was pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like, I have no complaints about any character. The Lord Atreides, Paul's father,
Mhm.
did a great job being regal, careful with his words,
Yep.
And then dying.
and then dying. He was great at dying.
Fabulous.
Peter DeVries, the guy who played that, was really well done.
Who's Peter DeVries?
Wormtongue.
oh my god!
and
What's
he
his-
also-
oh my God,
he
Wormtongue.
also
What's the?
played-
Can we go back one? We'll kick up the gentleman's name.
He was also in Star Trek Voyager. He played a serial killer Beta Z. And for any of you Trekkies out there, you'll know why that's weird.
Brad Dourif. He is. It's almost like they forgot that he's a great actor. Like, he did such a good job. I do hate the roles of the compute. They don't explain enough, and I get it. They don't fucking have time for
They
it.
don't explain shit, and they don't have
explain
time.
Shit. But they introduce all these really cool ideas,
Mhm.
but they don't quite deal. Like, they've got these guys that just look like they have, like you said, they look like they have herpes on
Yeah.
their lips, and I didn't quite get it. They made a comment in one of the exposition dumps
Mhm.
of these human computers,
The Mentats.
the Mentats,
Yeah.
and then they talk about their lips briefly.
Yep.
But then they show these guys, and it doesn't look like they have special lips. It just looks like they
Herpes.
have herpes.
They're drinking this poison that's causing them to.
Which
Is that what it
to
is?
function.
It's a it's a stimulant from a certain berry juice, and it's supposed to make their brains go into overdrive.
When you
Okay.
squeeze the milk out of a cat
See, I
to
totally...
live forever.
Well, let's unpack that for a quick second.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
Which, by the way, is not in the book, coin in the jar.
No, you got to milk that cat.
That's a great scene. I don't care if it's in the it's not in the book. That is a fantastic, like, creep-tastic scene.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, I'd love to explain that scene, but then we'd have to explain what a mentat is. So let's go back to what we were talking about.
So Dune itself, a long film, a slow film,
Yeah.
entertaining, and as a compliment, you're left wanting more.
Yes.
You feel like, wow, I definitely would have got a sequel, but where like you'd have to end it cliffhangery, and that's not what films were doing, right?
Correct.
The idea of the cinematic universe or cliffhangers and stuff like that wasn't a big thing because this was truly a cash in because everybody wanted to jump into Star Wars.
Yep.
Right? This was 84. We had Jedi coming out. We had Crawl. We had a bunch of fantasy films like just being thrown into cinemas.
Yep.
This was after Alien. There's a lot building and where we're going, and a lot where stuff just kind of
It's more
lingers.
than that. I've always said about Tolkien
Mhm.
that he is a great world builder, terrible writer.
That's been my experience with a lot of authors.
And
I
I-
love their world, but their characters are wanting.
Understand? I feel like the writer, Herbert, I feel like he probably fits in that same category. He built this crazy complex world that was so intriguing to me.
Mhm.
I want to learn more about the navigators.
Mm.
They are so interesting to me.
Yeah.
And because of that, but I also think that Paul Atreides is a boring character. Now that I've seen 2 movies
Right.
based on the same book, and I understand it's a very cliche Mary Jo
Chosen one.
chosen
The
one,
Luke
destined
Skywalker
one. Luke
idea.
Skywalker, it's a
Yeah.
very
Hero's
boring-
journey.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker kind of went away from that, but his original starting, but like
Yeah.
the Destinied character, it's just very boring. And I think he writes a very boring character. And generally, I think he probably wrote very boring characters in general. But he created this amazing universe
Yeah.
that I want to see more. I don't want the next Dune movie to be about Paul Atreides. I don't. I
Well,
want to see something else.
Well, I got some
bad
bad news for you.
my guy.
I know.
Because it's all about Paul. It becomes the Paul show.
Now, if we were to talk about the books, it's not the Paul show.
So it sounds more like David Lynch tried. He made a big budget
Yeah.
movie. He felt like he sold out. This allowed him to get a big old fat paycheck and go make more movies that he wanted to make because he was more into the artsy fartsy scene.
Yeah.
He originally wanted to make Dune in black and white. He was fighting with producers who were like, it is too dark. And he's
No.
like, no, I want the movie to be darker visually.
I'm glad
And
he
they had-
lost that fight.
And yeah, he visually was like, I want the film to be darker, like lighting wise. And the producers were arguing, no, it should be brighter because we've already had Flash Gordon, I want to say.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Did Flash Gordon come out? Yeah, because
Had to.
they later do Flash Gordon. They do Flash Gordon and then they do Dune because it's the same producer.
Yeah, Flash Gordon was 19. Ooh, no, that's not the film. That's the comic. 1980.
Yeah, so they already done Flash Gordon and they wanted to do something a little bit more brighter and fun to watch because it's such a dark film. So Dune flopped.
Oh, yeah.
Dune flopped at the box office.
I can understand why, though.
Dune like flopped.
You need to go into Dune with an understanding of the universe.
Yep.
And if you have that understanding, it's a pretty cool movie. If you don't have that understanding, you at first spend a whole lot of time getting blasted with a bunch of random jargon, and then things just fast forward. You don't see the transition of Paul from this random child who earns his power to earning the respect
Growing
of
up and becoming a man.
growing up, becoming a man, his love. 'Cause
Right.
clearly, there's this deep love that they just
Right.
barely ever talked about. Earning the respect of what the hell's the name? The Fremen?
The Fremen, yep.
Earning the respect of the Fremen. And this 2-year war that turns him from a boy to a man.
Right.
They skip all of that in like one scene. It was like 2 years later.
They did the thing,
Yeah.
right? They don't give any of they barely give any of the female actors anything to do
Yeah.
at all. They're just either damsels in distress or they're just standing there going like, oh, "We hope you're okay, Paul. Like, let us know if you need anything."
Oh, I'm just
like,
here to hug
there's
your
nothing.
baby.
There's nothing like
There's
that they do.
one female that was awesome in this. Only one. I don't know her name because she was the child. She was
Oh,
Paul's
the sister. She walks in.
When she walks into the Emperor, she's like, "I'm going to destroy you.
I know lifetimes of information.
Yeah.
And I will use psychic powers to just melt your brain. And it's wild.
Yeah, that was I loved her for that.
Yeah.
She was so cool. She was a young actress struggling with the role.
Well, she was a child.
She's a
very young child, but yeah.
But damn, is that a cool role to have?
Dune was made for $42 million.
Okay.
It only made $27 million in the box office. It flopped hard.
It deserved more than that.
It only made 27 because it was too. They were really trying to sell Star Wars, and it wasn't Star Wars.
See, the issue was they didn't give a handheld lexicon when they showed the movie.
Right, and it's the same thing with like the toys and how stuff just didn't come out.
Now, is there a Kyle MacLachlan action figure?
Yeah, there is. They filmed for the majority of it in Mexico because it was cheaper. For the desert locations and stuff. On the first couple weeks of filming, the crew all got sick. So they had to build a restaurant that only did Italian food. So
everyone's breath when they talked to each other was just garlicky.
Yeah. In Mexico, it rained every day for shooting. So it was a nightmare.
Very un-Dune-like.
Very un-Dune-like, right?
Except for that end scene.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped.
Yeah.
Stand outside and wait.
And so some other stuff. Actually, let's get back into the effects.
Okay.
Because you mentioned and throwing around the $42 million to build this movie.
Yeah.
And make this movie out. Sets, beautiful.
Oh my God!
First
gorgeous.
Opening scene, the first thing you said was, "Did they build this set?" And I want to say,
a lot of it was.
So there was
a lot
a
of it
set
was
where
painted
it was
glass.
a ship on like a dock somewhere.
Yeah.
But it was
on stilts.
But it was massive.
Right.
And I'm pretty good at looking at something going, that's VFX, especially something from that generation.
Or painted on the glass.
Or painted on the glass. Or
yeah.
That's all in the
Rotoscope.
category of VFX. It's some type of visual effects.
Yeah.
But it looked like they built that set.
Yeah.
And I just went, that's a massive set. Did they seriously build that? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Now, there were
which is great, which is a compliment.
It is.
That's a great compliment.
There were some rooms that looked like the general build-out was the same, and I wonder if they just like took out the panels and replaced them with.
Oh, for sure.
Sure, but even if they did that, that's a lot of work.
The hallways, them running through stuff, not necessarily one shot takes, but just the way they were framing stuff, right? Over Paul's shoulder, yelling out to the people of the Fremen in this huge, massive hallway. Clearly, differently cut together.
Yeah.
So he's not in a big hallway, but he's still giving this beautiful speech. The sets themselves wild. Ship design a little weird.
Yeah.
A little weird, less bug-like that we're used to.
Were they supposed to be bug-like?
I think that's his original design.
They call them ornithopters, which, as far as I know, means like bird wing if you're up on your Latin.
Okay.
Which I am not. So you kind of get the idea that it's supposed to flap, it's supposed to flutter, it's not a fixed wing aircraft, that's what is portrayed in a lot of the stuff.
Because it was cheaper.
So I want to bring up the next star of the show. They had 8 worm puppets.
8 of them.
8 of them. The biggest worm they had, all different sizes.
Really?
The biggest worm they had was 22 feet long.
I figured they just had one of
8
them.
of them, because there was multiple worms in different shots. Right. And they're arm puppets, and a lot of them were regular ass animatronic puppets.
Okay, yeah.
They built the sets as miniatures.
Yep.
So the worms would look huge.
Yeah.
And that's how they were filming a lot of those scenes. So you've got these sets of like, it almost looks like a children's sandbox with a bunch of plastered rocks and stuff everywhere. And then...
No. Obviously, we were taking notes during this, and I have one note that's like a stream of conscious thought on that one. Sandworm size problem.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is I felt like it felt like miniatures. I never got a real sense of size to these worms because it struggled because the worms are so massive.
So big, yeah.
So big. And because the way they had... I don't even think I felt that way. I think I even felt this way in the new Dune, which is... I never quite got a sense of their scope, their size, because it's hard to compare a human to the Empire State Building.
Right.
They're
It's so
rarely
hard.
beside each
Right.
other.
And even if they are, it's like, okay, you get a background,
Right.
like a gray
Right.
background. Like
There was
Right.
one scene where I heard you make a noise, and I don't know if it was astonishment or just revelation, but when the worm ate the sand crawler, it
And
came
it
out
yeah, I
swallowed it up.
loved that one.
Yeah.
That was a
And-
great scene.
because it surprised me too. I didn't expect it to be that big. Like it's just
Right.
big, like 3 points that you thought were dunes were actually parts of its jaw.
Well, you ask, I mean, you beg to differ the question of like, why are these people afraid of them? How are they living on this planet? How are they getting around? Right. And we quickly get these answers
Yeah.
after a lot of juxtaposition and just over explanations of
Yeah, you
the
want to talk about
politics and
juxtaposition? We
trade,
can go.
right? Trade politics and
Let's
you know,
summarize all of Game of Thrones
all
in
of it.
2 paragraphs.
Are you ready? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do Star Wars, but we're going to talk about trade. And the bad guys are robots and slightly racist Asian people.
It's funny
It's a
that
bad cliche and it's awful. It's terrible. Seriously.
it's funny that they got angry at the prequel series of Star Wars for starting the series with a scroll about trade agreements
Right.
and politics. And you're like, haven't you learned from Dune that this doesn't fucking
This
work?
doesn't work. But also, how would you start a war?
Yeah.
And this is crushing one house to another. Now you get
Well, what's the saying? Like diplomacy is continuation of war by other means, or
Right.
maybe I have that backwards.
So I want to go back to the second explanation and setup of the world. There are other planets.
Yep.
They just kind of do a very theater style of, hey, here are our main players. We have the
Yeah.
Emperor. We have Planet Harkonnen. We have the Atreides who are on Caladan.
Giedi Prime, Caladan,
And then
Dune, and there's supposed to be Seleucus Secundus, which is where the Emperor's soldiers come from.
There's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. There's one that they mentioned that I thought was kind of neat. I'd like to share some fun facts with you. There's a planet that they mentioned called Ix, I-X. And that's more of a joke for the reader than for anybody else, because in the book series, Ix is the 9th planet from the sun in a particular system. And they write that Ix may have not been the name of the planet, but the number. So IX is Roman numerals for 9.
Yay.
You know, because it's Ix. It's the 9th planet from the.
I do not remember that in the movie at all.
They mention like, oh, technology is fun. It comes from Ix, and when the scene with the navigator when he's in his little fish tank. It's one of the opening scenes. They mention, oh, technology from Ix, and then something from another planet, something from another planet.
I would love to give you all the energy
yeah.
I've got for that, but I can't say I've got any because
Well-
that is taking this movie that is already dense with random generated names and words and adding more to it. I can't handle that.
What do you got? What's another joke?
It's not a joke. I thought it was interesting, but I think it's
I'm
from one
about
of
to
the.
set you up for another. I'm about to set you up. So what do you got?
I've got no more jokes.
No, but keep going.
You guys wanted to talk about those funny lamps that were everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Set design, and we're already talking about the creatures and the costumes and stuff. You all both gasped at one point just because of visually the way a lot of the camera is shot up and a lot of these beautiful scenes and these wide shots.
Yeah.
You both went, that's Warhammer as hell.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
Warhammer as hell. Holy shit. Look at these
Specifically
gold
40K.
statues and this beautiful but haunting, massive cathedral of a spaceship.
It's not just
and,
enough to have a shape. It has to be gold and it has to be like gothic filigree.
Right.
And
you have the first scene when you have the Harkonnens, or not the Harkonnens, the Navigation Guild visit the
Spacing
Emperor
Guild,
yeah.
to be like, yo, things aren't all right. And we're coming to find out what the fuck is going on.
And-
you guys are both like, this is Warhammer shit.
well,
Like,
it's
40K.
also they have like wires coming out straight out of
Right,
people's heads
for
into
the
their- back
Emperor.
into their nose. It's like they just got shit all over 40K. Like it just looks like it came from 40K.
Right.
And in the fact that somebody is seeing a navigator, let alone a member of the Spacing Guild, like I read recently a couple of the first chapters of the Dune book, and they emphasize no one sees a guildsman ever, let alone a navigator. So the fact that the Emperor is talking to one is a big fucking deal. Like I know he's the Emperor, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
nobody sees a navigator.
Yeah, these are legendary, like mythology
They're-
creatures.
I do also think they
With
had this
little
scene-
hands.
with little hands. They didn't. That led me to so many questions once I learned what they were.
Yeah.
And because I got this tiddly little bit about what they were and how they work, that they're human by you guys, that they're humans that took in so much spice that it changed them physically.
They
Right.
mutated physically and mentally.
And now they sort of use their mental powers to guide things with the spice through warp space effectively. And I thought that's super interesting. It reminds me again of 40K. That being
You
said,
need your navigators, you need your Gellerfields, you need your, this, that, and the other.
yeah.
Astronomicon. And
so it has all these things. Obviously, we recognize that the book came before Warhammer 40K, so therefore it's the other way around.
Right,
We all
right.
know that.
But the Pikes are taking over, and everything's been a lot worse since they've been running Spice.
Yeah. What? Oh God. Oh yeah. Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I really loved all that, and I wanted to read more about that.
Mhm.
But there was a scene that I couldn't quite parse. I understood what was happening because I was told that what was happening is the navigation scene where the navigator was navigating the eraser ship, or you called it
the Highliner.
the Highliner.
Highliners.
Highliner.
The Eraserhead.
The eraser. I was mixing clearly stuff. And he was clearly navigating and doing something with his mind and blowing laser beams out of its tiny little warped mouth.
And orange smoke.
So they're predicting where they're headed. That way they don't crash into something.
Well, when you take enough spice, you're supposed to be able to see like a couple seconds into the future. So if you see a couple seconds into the future and like, oh no, this puts me into the heart of the sun, I'm going to go over here instead.
So that's kind of what he was
That's
doing.
why they're
He was
navigating.
looking in the future. Should I go now? Nope. Should I go now? Nope. Should I go now? Nope.
Where am I landing? Where am I headed? Kind of
Oh.
thing. So that's why they jump. And there's a lot of talk, even in the new film, for how much it costs. So when in the new film, they put a very large emphasis on cost and value of the spice, and how much like, hey, we're having this big meeting. There's flags. It's a parade. It's a whole rigmarole. And Oscar Isaac playing Duke Leto is biting his tongue, going, "This is going to cost us a fortune. All of this is for nothing, and it's just pomp from circumstance, and we're blowing smoke, and look at us." But the cost to have the Spacing Guild travel to present a piece of paper to say, you own Dune now, this costs us billions of space dollars, we're going to go back into our spaceship and then take off, is that flex of power and wealth within the galaxy. We run Arrakis. We will go where we want. We will travel how we want. And if you don't like it, then take 19 years to get from one planet to the next planet.
Yeah.
Like, that's light years, like, fuck you kind of thing. And there's such a death grip of the economy system that you immediately understand at the second half of the film when Paul's like, fuck it, we're going to blow up all of the mining. We're not going to kill anybody. But if we can crush and
Although he does.
He does. He kills a lot of people. It's a lot of genocide being thrown around. If we stop the production of fuel, the emperor will have to come, because then there's no food, then there's nothing getting traveled around, there's no trade. It's wild.
That's the problem with the last half of this movie.
Yeah.
I felt the first half was going okay.
Yep.
I think it was slow, but there was giving me a lot of data to cover.
A lot of build.
But then suddenly in the last half, it's just went, and he's the chosen one. Like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
And he's made it rain. The end.
Yeah, and they didn't do enough with that war. They didn't show how smart Paul was being. I didn't understand that he was doing that to force the Emperor to come here.
Right.
I didn't realize that until you just said it.
Right.
Yep.
And I
He's
feel
trying to
that's where
draw
it's
him out.
missing.
No,
Yeah.
when he sends his little sister Alia to the Emperor, and Harkonnen, and she kind of like gloats a little bit, like, "Oh, I don't know, my brother." Blah, blah. The thing for that is she's actually kidnapped by one of the Harkonnens. I can't remember. It's been a minute since I read the book, and like they don't go into enough detail about why Alia is so important. Like, yeah, she's a reverend mother, but she's a child at the same time. But she's also fucking fierce. Like, they call her Alia the Knife because she kills people.
Well, they kind of showed it off where she used the voice on the Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah, and then she stabbed him with her own Gom
And then
Jabbar.
pulled out his nipple plugs.
It may have been his heart plug. Like, do you remember in that one scene where there's that slave boy and he pulls out his heart plug? Apparently all Harkonnens have a heart plug.
Okay.
Even the head of the Harkonnen, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Why would you put that
I
in
didn't
yourself?
get that. took it, she unplugged it, because I think what that was he's having his blood filtered out because of all the diseases. So she
That's
unplugged
exactly
it
what
and
it
then
is.
poisoned him.
Or maybe she fucked with his gravity belt. I don't know. It was hard to
I
say.
think no. I think you're right. I think you were onto something. It was not to interrupt. I apologize.
No.
But I think you're right. It was the filter system. She pulls out the filter system and then stabs him.
Yeah.
Right, immediately like putting his body into toxic shock syndrome.
Yeah.
And then,
And
he
then he
floats out the window and gets eaten by a worm and
Right.
like 8 other things.
Right.
They did not talk about, and this hurts my heart, what a crysknife is.
So the Chris knife scene and the fight between the Fremen and Paul was originally in the TV version of the movie. It was cut out.
The TV version. Wait, so this is the same movie cut up and designed for TV?
Yep.
Well, I thought it was like a whole different film, whole different like different actors, everything.
Nope.
Oh.
So there is Sci-Fi Channel did their own version of Dune. James McElroy's in it. Professor
McElroy?
McElvoy. Professor X. He was in
Yeah.
Split. Yeah. Sorry. Lynch's Dune was cut up and aired on TV during the 80s.
Wow.
So they would add in a few scenes because they'd have a little bit of extra budget. It's the same thing with Halloween. Halloween 1 and 2.
So that's why I thought it was a different one, because you're right. James McAvoy was in that.
Completely
And
different.
that's why I thought it was. So they just transpose him into the
No.
full-
You got to think. Okay, so back in the day, right? Back in the day, when I shake my fist at the cloud like an old man, not everybody had VCRs.
Sure.
So they would play movies on TV,
Yeah, that's how I first watched Star Wars.
right? Dune was one of those films
Sure. Yeah.
that was just played on thing. The James McAvoy, I'm saying it wrong again, aren't I?
No, James McAvoy. Yeah.
McAvoy was a completely like, hey, we're rebooting Dune. We're
Yeah,
gonna do Dune 1 and then do 2.
So it
Dune
was
2.
a refilming.
It was a 3-film thing, but it has nothing to do with this.
But it was refilming.
Yes, it was completely different thing.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, but
that's
like
what I thought.
the scene where he fights Stilgar.
Yes. It's not Stilgar. It's a guy that shows up for like 5 minutes in the movie and Paul kills him.
Right. So
But
there's a whole scene. You might
there
remember it
is-
because this is how the Vanu film ends, where Stilgar is like, hey, the ship goes down. Jessica and Paul are like, fuck, we need help. We need to run. We're going to
Yep.
meet. And then the Fremen kind of jump them.
Yep.
Then they have we should just kill them right now or trade them to the Harkonnens and maybe we'll be safe
Yep.
kind of moment. And then Paul says, fuck it, let's fight. Or doesn't want to fight at all. And the Fremen are like, if he is who he is or says he is, we need to fight him to challenge him.
Yep.
Paul doesn't want to fight, ends up fighting because it's a movie and a book. Paul kills him, and then they pretty much melt the guy down and give Paul his water. And
Yep.
that's such a huge, like, this is what we can give to you. You have to carry
Well, to
his
them,
liquid
your liquid is your value.
Well,
is your value. But
and
all of that was cut out, and that's the weird thing where it's just kind of like this film all of a sudden just Paul's with the Fremen.
And he's their king now,
And
by the
he's
way.
their king versus he beat up the biggest, toughest Fremen, won, and is like, this is not how we should do this.
There's a lot more to that scene too, where I don't think he carries the water. They say he carries the water, but they give him like these coins, these rings, which represent water, and they actually give the water to a designated water carrier who is, it's a very sanctimonious, very important position in the tribe, the water carrier. But they also skip over the fact that he killed this man, and in Fremen culture, when you kill somebody, you are now responsible for everything that they were responsible for. So Paul inherited the guy's wife, the guy's kids, and he has to take care of them.
Yeah, and he cries.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger thing.
And it's,
deal,
yes,
'cause
he
he's
cries.
he's
It's
cries.
very important that he cries. He gives water to the dead.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
interesting.
you don't do that.
No, you do that, but only for the people that you love. And they're like, why is he giving water to the dead? He just met this guy.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. There's a lot of cultural tribalism that they completely left out of this, which is a beautiful part
Yeah.
in the book. Beautiful part. And in the film, it does an okay job.
But it's one of the things that got cut out because of time.
It's a slow moment, but also it would have been the first knife fight. So when we get to the end with the climax with him versus
Yes.
Sting, it would have been like, okay, Paul can take him.
Yes.
And the other guy's fighting left-handed, almost
What's the movie?
southpaw, almost, and like he,
Princess,
you know what I mean?
Princess Bride, like, oh, I'm not left-handed. No.
Right. There's like a southpaw fight, and then they exchanges, and then he fights Faye, and you're supposed to really be like worried because all of a sudden we've had this very slow Fremen fight.
Yes.
Because they're trying to conserve energy and they're trying to conserve water and they don't want to just
very-
go into it.
They're
right?
very
It's-
reptilian. Like, we have
Yeah.
so much energy. This is the conservation of energy. I attack when I attack.
Yeah, it's like watching like spiders or lizards fight. It's a very slow but
Okay.
deadly thing.
And it's also emphasized by, they don't go into this in the movie, but shields attract worms like none other.
Yeah,
Because
of the echo.
The shield and the knife fight,
Oh.
you're slow on the attack and you're quick on the offense when you're shield fighting. You want the point of a shield fight is that you want to trick your opponent into leaving himself open so you can go in real slow and get through his shield to give him like that good poke.
That's why when we get to the end fight with the Harkonnen, he's just stabbing at nothing. Right?
Oh.
It's Harkonnen, it's fast, it's energy. I'm going to kill you. Do. And it's not
They're angry, they're
it's,
violent,
it's
they're
not
explosive.
it's not
There's
a
so much
chess
more
match.
Depth they did not get
Right.
in this
It's
movie.
meant to be like a chess fight. It is a slow like
Oh.
They
and
also-
that's that one scene we lost, which would have built up that second half.
They also
that
left
added.
out. They also left out las guns or laser guns. I think they're called las guns.
The weirding way guns?
No,
or?
there's like a laser gun that they use. But the thing about lasers and shields is if you hit a laser with a shield, there's a chemical reaction or an atomic reaction that happens on both ends. Both the shield and the laser explode atomically. Like, they both turn into atomic bombs. So if there's shields on the battlefield, you don't use a laser. And if they're using lasers, you don't use a shield.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of lore and world building nonsense that kind of just gets swept to the wayside that has a bigger importance in the pacing of the film.
I'm
And-
glad that with that.
Speaking of juxtaposition.
Here's one thing that I just argued with about Boba Fett, which is, and a lot of other stuff, which is Chekhov's gun.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite rules. And they talk about the weirding, and they talk about this weirding and say that's what the Emperor doesn't want to happen. That's why he's making the Atreides fight the Harkonnen, is to weaken the Atreides.
Right.
And I really am happy that, as much as I fucking hate the weirding,
You don't like the sound gun?
no, I don't like the sound gun.
The
Which,
sound
by the
gun?
way, was not in the book, as
At
far
all.
as I know.
It's just goofy. It looks weird. Their guns always look weird.
It's
in
a
old sci-fi.
microphone with a speaker on the end of his fist. Like, I don't...
It doesn't make any
I don't-
sense.
It's
I
a
don't
neat
like it.
concept, but
But-
it didn't. Yep.
They talk about it and say this is what we don't like about it, and then at least later on he goes to use it. So they fulfill that Chekhov's gun. Of,
Right.
There's this really cool baller weapon. Oh look, now you finally get to see the really cool baller weapon.
Right.
I'm happy that they did that, but I think it is weird
Well,
by
in
its name.
So
in the book, Coin in the Jar, the weapon is the Fremen. Like, that's the whole point
It's
of...
the numbers.
It's the numbers, and that they're just tough as hell.
It's tough as hell, and then I think the thing is with weirding is it was a simplified mass abundance of a weapon that is easy to train and easy to use. And what happens when a whole bunch of people stand up against a tyrant? What
Yeah.
happens when we weaponize the people? What happens when we say no?
You get a revolution.
Right, and you get a revolution, you get a Dune, you get a Paul,
Yep.
right? You get a cult leader, you get a weird, wacky religion where they're all doing sand and
Yep.
they're in black still suits, drinking piss, living in
Looking-
caves,
looking each other's deep blue rotoscoped eyes.
Right,
Nope.
right. It Paul almost takes the stance of a cult leader here.
Yeah, he does.
He immediately
No.
steps in and is like, I am this almost like white savior to these
Yeah.
desert people.
No, that's
and we're
that's
not shitting on any of it. This
that's
is just
not
how
by
this,
accident.
No.
In the book, they call it the Missionaria Protectiva, and it's something that the Bene Gesserit do. Is on every populated world, they kind of instill they kind of give the local populace a prophecy, like they give them a little bit of information, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just something that if a Bene Gesserit is stuck on a planet, they know the right words, they know the right texts, they know the right things to quote to emulate, so that, like, oh hey, I guess maybe from absolute coincidence, I fit this role of the savior, so that they can kind of easily take up the mantle of the chosen one, and then just get the fuck off the planet.
right. They
It
manipulate.
sounds a whole lot like Paul is not this destined one, as much as he is someone who gained that power and is utilizing it.
He is and
Yes.
he isn't.
Because of his wealth and influence and how he was grown up.
And not only that, but you guys have told me the next book series and stuff where things travel, and I had this problem where they're like, he's a savior, he's a good guy. Look, they care more about their people in the Sandcrawler things than they do about the Sandcrawler itself.
Right.
That's so strange. And then he immediately turns around and is like, oh, the princess of the Emperor, the daughter of the Emperor, who has really nothing to do with any of this, she's now my slave. It's like, hold on. Like, you have turned into the very thing you fought against.
He marries her for political gain and no other reason.
Right.
It sounds like he's not a savior. He's just someone who has abilities.
He is, but he turns into a very much the ends justify the means kind of guy.
Right.
He goes on they call it a galactic-wide jihad, and he brings all of humanity under heel.
Jesus.
Now, in the following book, he has a breaking of conscience, and he goes into the desert and just stays there.
So the other thing too is we talk about hero's journey. We talk about the themes of the film and the book itself, becoming a man, growing up, losing your parents even. Paul doesn't really, especially in this film, doesn't really sit in on any meetings, doesn't really make any big decisions. Paul is being told pretty much what is going to happen to him for the majority of the film. And then all of a sudden we get a hard cut training montage and Paul now is king.
Yeah.
And he is not a good leader. There is very little development. He drinks some Gatorade, the water of life, and then all of a sudden is able to...
He's king of the psychics.
He's king of the psychics, and he can ride the worm. And visually, that is I'm going to go and hunt the biggest bear, or I'm going to kill the wolf, or the thing. But like realistically and written-wise, it's weak. It falls apart.
Terrible.
And it's like, okay, well, he never has a moment. And I think the Vanu film does a little bit better because he kind of speaks up in his father's meetings when they're like, hey, what do we want to do with the people? What do we want to do with thing? And Paul steps up and says, well, no, we should do this. And everyone kind of looks and goes, young Paul, like, that's a very wise thing to say because of his age and him having to sit in with his father at these huge, very important decisions to how we handle and manage the planet and the people and how do we bridge these cultures. This film is just, it's a snap of a finger and Paul's got the Burger King crown on his head.
No, he's definitely better than that in the book, and I will always pick the book as the source of canon rather than the film adaptation. But I think you're absolutely right.
Right.
I think
they just kind of skip over a lot. Where it's like, hey, I'm here now, and also I'm your king. So guess what?
Go ahead.
I strongly get a feeling. You can absolutely 100% feel it. David Lynch wanted this to be at least 2 movies.
Yeah.
And he was forced to midway speed it the fuck along.
Speed it up.
You can tell because it was fine. I mean, it was exposition dump and setting up a lot of stuff.
You do what you got to do, though.
You do what you got to do. And then immediately as action started, as it stopped being here's the world.
It's more expensive.
It gets more expensive. And when action started to happen about half the way through, immediately it became sped up and everything was just forgotten about. Characters stopped developing. It was just, nope, this is who this character is now. They introduced these characters 2 years later.
Less about characters and more about events.
Yeah.
It is the events because you don't get any life of Fremen. And that's almost visually a disappointing thing because
absolutely disappointing.
The Fremen are so complex. They're wonderful.
It's
more
than that.
This is a compliment to the Boba Fett thing that we've been joking about. The Tusken Raiders, right? No. You go, oh God. But like, and we're talking about, doing a uncut lizard up the nose, but it's culture. This film focuses so much on culture, and we talked about it even to set design, where it goes Caladan, woods, warm, blues,
it's an ocean
fabrics,
world.
ocean world.
Yeah.
Harkonnen, industrial, metal, toxins, poisons, disease. Everything's rusty. It's very Warhammer.
Smoky.
The Emperor. Everything's fucking gold. It's this very Salvador Dali painting of just grand, beautiful halls, massive rooms.
Which makes sense because wasn't he involved
People who
in
vacuum.
the original?
He was going to be he was going to be in it. I don't know what he was going to be. I think Orson Welles was originally going to be the Emperor.
Got it.
But then you get to the Fremen, and they kind of get shit on. Like you get the hey, these are the servants, they're going to clean, they're the housekeepers. You don't get Paul being like, oh, like we see the vaults of water, but we don't get, hey, what do they eat? There's no moment.
Why do they keep these water? Why do they?
How
why
are
do
they
do what
surviving?
They do?
There's no culture shift. There's no moment of Paul not necessarily being a fish out of water, but being like, okay, this is like unlocking
Let me
that
learn
secret
your
of,
ways.
oh my God,
Well,
let me learn your ways.
That was one of the things that they talked about when there was that one scene where Leto and Paul show up and they're wearing their still suits, and the ecologist Kynes is there, and he's giving Leto the business, like, oh, you got to put this on this way, put that on the other way. This is where your water sacks go. This is, this filters the urine and the feces and distills the water in the pouches. And then he gets to Paul, and he's like, who did this for you? Like, no, I did it myself. Well, how? You've worn this before, right? It's like, no. And then he quotes a part of the prophecy.
he wears a desert,
Yeah.
And
desert style.
he knows
He knows your ways.
he knows the ways.
Yeah.
So he is supposed to know some of their ways, but he's also supposed to get to know. He's supposed to get to know the people, because there's a host of
there's a lot. It's
of
The
Fremen that
problem
he's
with that
supposed to-
last section is one of the fundamental rules of storytelling is that all stories are about people.
Yep.
They are always about people.
Yep.
And because this is about action, we discussed that last half is about events. It's not about the people.
It becomes a
And that's-
historical fiction at that point.
That's why it becomes dry. That's why I think we all like the first half.
I love the movie. It's
I would even
slow.
say I like
It's-
the second half.
Yeah.
It's just if it was more about people, then
There's more character development,
Yeah.
more. It definitely. I like the first
Well-
one, but the problem with the first one is exposition and information dumping.
Yep.
And the problem with the second half,
so keep up, loser.
yeah, and the second half is nobody cares about the characters anymore. Just get through it. We just have to get through this. We just have to finish it.
Get to the end, run.
And I feel like there's a problem in the first half and a problem in the second half, but they're very different problems.
Yeah, because they're different movies at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
there was 58 speaking roles in this film.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
58 people are to have lines, and there's a lot of moving parts. And then we have these moments where there's soft moments where Patrick Stewart shows back up,
Yeah, they didn't
and
even
they
explain
hug,
that. He's
and
just
it's just like,
suddenly
you're
there again.
alive. Oh my God, right? Because
Yes.
there's this whole bond between Paul the Duke and the people, the men in his life that are all acting as surrogate father figures.
The chosen
who
men.
care. The chosen men in his
Yeah.
life who care and are teaching each person.
Uh,
Each person is teaching Paul a different lesson.
Gurney
Patience,
Halleck,
defense. Always think 2 steps ahead.
don't sit with your back to the door.
Don't sit with your back to the door.
Here's how to play a balalaika.
It's easier to make friends with honey than vinegar.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of like the politics of it that we kind of get, but quickly lose as soon as the Harkonnen invade.
Speaking of the Harkonnen invading and Patrick Stewart, why the fuck did he save the goddamn pug?
Well, wouldn't
you?
Well,
I was a good boy.
He just has the pug sitting in one of those like baby carriers
Yeah.
on his chest, and he's going to war.
with
So-
an assault laser rifle.
I want you.
Okay,
Oh
well,
no,
that's
who plays Patrick Stewart in? Because that's not Duncan, Idaho. Who is Patrick Stewart? Is Gurney
Patrick
Halleck.
Stewart is Gurney Halleck. He plays he's
Okay,
a bard.
So I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Closed.
Okay, now imagine Cable running with a pug, shooting at Harkonnen soldiers.
Wait, Cable.
Cable from the X-Men movie.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Cable.
okay, yeah. All
Thanos
right.
running in and with a pug in his arm, killing Harkonnen.
I fucking love it.
Right? Because that's oh my God, the actor,
Patrick Stewart.
guy who plays Thanos.
Oh, oh my god.
That's where I blanked. Fuck. That's where I blanked. That's why I was like, anybody? Nothing?
No, this is painful.
See if you can do it before I do the internet.
I do this all
Oh my
the
God,
time.
chat, hit us up.
Thanos actor. Josh Brolin.
Brolin. Lovely gentleman. He's in a bunch of movies. Old Boy was fun.
Great movie.
The remake
Men,
one with
Men
him
in
in it.
Black, the new one.
Was it any good?
The remake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it's
Wait, was
Old
he in
Boy.
Men in Black?
Yes.
Was he?
Yeah. He played young
Young K.
No
Young K.
shit. He played Young K. Okay, cool.
did a great job.
So Josh Brolin running with a pug, killing Harkonnen
Yeah, it's funny.
is a great
It's funny.
visual. I wanted to see that. I just want to see him like out to get groceries
It's
or
just too
something
funny
with his
that-
little dog under his arm.
It was so weird because this movie is not a comedy. It, as far as I can tell,
There
there
are
were no jokes,
no funny moments.
no funny moments,
Well,
except for that one moment.
There was that one thing where they're trying to impress the majesty of the space fleet and the space travel, and Paul's just got this goofy looking pug sitting on his lap. I'm like, if you want me to take this seriously, don't put a
Right.
goofy
But
dog.
it's trying to show wealth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just trying to show wealth. But yeah. Well, let's get to the last segment. We got to rate those eyebrows.
Oh my god.
Okay,
Ladies and
so
gentlemen,
it's-
welcome to a podcast within a podcast. As we rate those eyebrows, we're doing Dune.
All right.
Um,
So it's definitely between two people.
there are some fucking eyebrows.
No,
in this
there is
movie.
only one person there.
Nope.
No, there is not.
between Thufir Hawat and Peter DeVries.
Okay,
Both Mentats.
I get that, but there is definitely one winner. And who was the actor who played it?
Freddie Jones also played.
Freddie Jones and Brad.
Was it Freddie
Dourif.
Jones? So
Yeah.
Freddie Jones.
Those eyebrows.
Now, Freddie Jones was my first thought for the winner. But
Fucking here.
I really like the other actor. He's in so much cool stuff.
Oh,
So,
he is.
All and stuff.
But we're talking about eyebrows here. And
well, you gotta
here's the
bring
deal.
up
I
some
literally
pictures.
thought so. They showed the first character, the first Mentat,
Mhm.
the good guy Mentat,
Yep.
with eyebrows like wings.
And he's freaking out
Bushes.
the entire movie because stuff is going wrong.
yes,
And it's like,
he's clearly.
what
has
is
things-
your direction? You're
Sorry,
a robot.
did
You're
we-
not a robot.
Did
Your
we discuss what a
computer is.
Mentat was? A Mentat is a human with
They're
a mind like a
biolog-
computer.
Yeah, and so he does all of this, and immediately as they showed the next Mentat, which is
Peter DeVries.
Peter DeVries' character, Peter DeVries, I thought he was his son because I didn't understand that he was a Mentat.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, clearly you have the same eyebrows. And he's smaller eyebrows,
Yep.
younger eyebrows.
Yeah.
He's clearly the son. And I went, nope, it's not. So since there's the father Mentat, and in my mind,
Oh,
the son
Daddy
Mentat.
Mentat.
Sorry, I wanted to put a pin in
I
this,
like that.
but in the book, corn in the jar, Paul is also supposed to be a Mentat. The point of a Mentat is you're supposed to train as a Mentat before you know what a Mentat is from the age of 2 onwards, and you don't know that you're being trained as a Mentat. And in the first half of the book, after the first half of the book, his parents come to him and is like, hey, by the way, you've been trained as a Mentat. Do you want to keep going? I'm like, sure, why not?
Interesting.
So
Well,
he does have a computer
the
brain.
actors
Anyway,
and the-
eyebrows.
and the actors and the processing there is kind of off-putting when you first see these characters in scenes because they're directing, and you kind of get the visual sense you're out of this world. You're out of place.
Oh, yeah.
You are thinking like a computer. You are visually like he's freaking out, and everybody else is kind of like, what the fuck? But they're used to it.
Yeah.
It's like a Data. It's like a 3PO. It's like a. It's not a cyborg.
Just neurotic.
Neurotic. I would even say like a Cylon, just kind of processing.
I
Like
just
everyone's
never-
having emotion, and he's freaking out because the one thing doesn't compute, or this isn't going exactly the way
Or
he thought it would go this way.
There was
and-
that one scene where they're trying to get sabotage devices out of the shield wall, and he's just like, these devices are too easy to find.
right, and he's losing
What's
his
the
mind, and
plan?
everyone else
What's
is
going
like
on?
working, being like, "We found another one. Good job, everyone!" And he's like, "This is bullshit." Like,
I just think they failed to show him as a human computer.
right,
He just seemed like a smart consultant.
Well,
Right,
that's
right.
the thing. They're not computers. They're not like soulless machines.
No, but they think in a logical pattern. I felt
and
like he was
you
too
can show them
The
like
Vulcan.
a mathematic
Vulcan.
equation, and like they got it.
right.
Yeah,
So I think Freddie Jones also had it. Daddy Mentat with the giant ass eyebrows.
damn right.
They were huge butterfly wings on that man's face, and they were gorgeous.
They must have weighed. Those prosthetics must have weighed so much.
Huge. Even his nose, like, yeah, because it's just there's a lot
Well,
with
there's-
his hair and everything.
There's
Oh,
also
wow.
one thing you haven't considered is when those eyebrows are so big and so winged that if they're on set and there's a breeze one day, they might lose an actor.
Jesus. So I think we got eyebrows. Adam, what would you rate Dune?
I would probably rate it a. So I'm going to frame this.
Okay.
So for the first few episodes, we're going to frame this. Generally, in my 1 to 10 ratio,
Okay.
if it's a 5 or lower, I probably don't want to see the movie again,
Okay.
or I don't want to
okay.
see more about it. Above that, I'd be willing to watch it again
Right.
with someone else.
Right.
Okay. Obviously, the higher you go, the better. This was probably a 7.
Wow. I will say, with me and Nathan both, because Nathan, I'm going to ask you next. What would you rate Dune?
Oh, this is a tough question. I am a huge Dune fanboy. Definitely above a 5. I think a 7 or an 8 is probably a solid number. It wasn't great, but being of the Dune franchise, you get yourself a 5 just off the top. And I don't know. I enjoyed myself. I had fun.
Awesome. That's awesome. So personally, I also would go with the I would give it an 8. And I feel you're 100% right. I feel knowing the material, I found Dune very good, a little long in the tooth, a little slow. I missed a lot of the mark for large character arcs and stories, but I really enjoyed it. I find Dune is one of those films where if you go back and watch it a second time, even a third time, you're going to notice little shit that you missed.
Yeah.
Background stuff happening, right? That are which is completely wonderful. The best way I can describe this is even because of book series and film and stuff like that. The Witcher, the books, great, sure. Netflix, everybody likes Henry Cavill. He's handsome. He's a good dude. Witcher season one is fantastic. If you go and watch the Polish movie of The Witcher, which we will do because you haven't seen it.
You're right, I haven't.
You haven't seen the Polish Witcher?
No.
Hexer Man.
Die Hexer?
Die Hexer Man. Die Hexer Man is a lot like Dune, where you know the material, you know what it looks like when it's got the $1 billion budget, like Netflix, but it is, we're going to take everything, we're going to condense it down to a movie, we're going to take this entire book and we're going to put it into a film. And it kind of has those vibes. Dune is fantastic, but it also now feels a little dated, aged, and almost something like you would rent from the library. Not necessarily terrible, not cheap, but a time. It's a very time movie.
I think my like final thought on the movie that is best describes why I like it. It inspires me to want to know more about the Dune universe.
That's awesome.
I think it's a terrible movie. Like, it's not a great movie, but I really want to learn more about this universe. His vision was really brought forth and made my curiosity and hooked my curiosity.
So I'm not going to open up anymore too much, but there was a bunch of RTS games that are apparently just incredible.
Yeah, I've played those.
Incredible games. There is board games that are quite just as fun. There is a lot of lore and a lot of love for Dune. It is very much the smart man Star Wars, which is fine, but I don't know. There's a lot there. A lot of sand.
Now, to encourage everybody to read the books, and I think you should always read the books, I will say this. Of the series, Paul may not be the main character. It's Duncan Idaho.
Cool.
Interesting.
A character named Duncan Idaho. Adam, you want to take us home?
I want you all to join us on the Ronin Geek Discord. Talk about this movie with us. Bring up your opinions. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us more about the square-shaped shields that they have.
Yeah, what did you guys like about Dune? Clearly we missed, because there's so much to talk about. We missed something.
I love the squares.
And if you can, join us on Twitter. All the links will be in the doobly-doo down below. And that's where we can leave it off. Where can they see you, Rich?
I am at Geek Movie House doing all kinds of weird D&D and occult nonsense. Nathan?
I have no social media to speak of, so Adam?
That's it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for Dune. Fuck. Holy fuck. I'm so sorry.
You're worse at intros than I am.
I am awful because I'm in a giant sleeping bag and it's a million degrees.
It doesn't help that you probably have sand all inside of there.
It's covered in sand. It's full of sand.
I hate it. It gets everywhere.
It's everywhere. Oh, fuck. Oh,
I shall not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I shall face my fear and let it pass over me and through me. When my fear has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path and... Fuck.